Coming up, Dr. Torres will answer your latest questions about the pandemic. Plus, what's with all this snow we've had recently?
Why is it so snowy?
We'll explain what's happening with this winter weather. Also ahead, the hosts of Wow in the World will be here with some cool facts about the human body.
Every single person in the world with blue eyes has one common ancestor.
Plus, we'll introduce you to this adorable baby koala. And inspiring kids, a 13-year-old girl on a mission to stitch some hope and love back into our lives.
I do understand that it is of great importance that we remember these people.
This is NBC Nightly News, Kids Edition.
Welcome back to Nightly News Kids Edition. I'm Lester Holt. I hope you guys are doing well. We've got a lot of great stuff coming up, including this heartwarming story about the work a teenage girl is doing. We can't wait for you to meet her a bit later on. But our top story continues to be the coronavirus, and we know you have lots of new questions, so we want to get straight to them. Joining us now for our Ask the Doc segment is Dr. John Torres. And Dr. John, our first question today comes from New Jersey.
Hi, I'm Adeline and I'm 8 years old.
I'm 5 and I'm 5.
And we live in Chesley, New Jersey. Our question is, we love to go to the theater and participate in the performing arts. When, because of COVID, will it be safe to do these sorts of things again?
Thanks! We love Kids Edition!
All right, guys, thanks for that question because, Dr. John, as you know, I play in a band. We haven't been able to do anything for a year, so I'm very curious what your answer is here.
You know, doing things indoors, like indoor theater, band type situations, that's going to be a few months before we can do that because you're around other people and you're inside, which is a high risk area. As far as performing arts, it's the same thing unless you think a little creatively. Creative thinking means going outside, making sure you're social distancing, possibly doing it with masks on. I know that's not the way you always like to do it, but for now, it might be a good way to do it until you can get to that point where enough people are vaccinated and cases are low enough that we can go back inside and celebrate those things that we've always wanted to do and we haven't been able to do for the last year or so.
All right, Doc, our next question comes from all the way in Rwanda.
Hi, Nightly News. My name is Zoe Mosazera. I live in Rwanda and I'm in grade 1. I'm 6 years old. So I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, how did the coronavirus spread all around the world? And the second question is, how do bubbles become rainbow colored? Bye. I love Nightly News Kids Edition.
Oh, we're glad to hear you're watching over in Rwanda. That's terrific. Dr. John, what's your answer?
You know, these are 2 very great questions. To answer the one about how coronavirus spreads around the world, it spreads around the world because we travel around the world. And so you can imagine, if I get coronavirus here in Colorado, I can be in Rwanda tomorrow, which means that I might not even be feeling sick at that point, but I could certainly be spreading the virus. And so we have to be very, very careful when we travel. Now, the second part of the question about the bubbles, it's very observant on your part. And the main reason you see the rainbow colors is because all the bubbles are different colored. They're reflecting light a little differently because of the thickness of the wall on the bubble. And that thickness means the outside skin is reflecting light different than the inside skin. And you're seeing a color. And all the bubbles are a little bit different colored. That gives you the rainbow color, Lester.
Dr. John Torres, the man with the props. Thanks as always.
You bet.
All right, well, as we head into March, I'm guessing some of you are hoping those snow days are behind us. We've actually received a few questions from you guys about the recent weather, and here to answer them is our pal WNBC weather anchor Dave Price. Dave, it's great to have you here. We have a couple of questions from siblings in New Jersey about all the recent snow we've had here in the Northeast. Here it is.
Hi, I'm Adeline and I'm 8.
I'm 5 and I'm 5.
And we live in Chesley, New Jersey. Our question is, why is it so snowy? We thought global climate change was coming around, so isn't it supposed to be getting hotter and not colder?
Thanks! We love Kids Edition!
Thanks for the question, guys. And Dave, I think we get this idea of global warming locked in our head.
Yeah, so we think of warm, we don't think of snow, Lester, but let's talk about it a little bit and give you some answers. First of all, you're right. It's been snowy and it's been cold. Let's talk about February right now. We had snow over 47 of the lower 48 states. That's a lot of the United States. Just think about it. Seattle, the largest two-day snowstorm in 50 years. That's half a century. We go down to Houston, where it was the coldest wind chill since 1990 at 1 degree below zero, and that's pretty far south. And then we come on up to Chicago, where at least a foot of snow covered that city for 17 days straight. That's the longest streak since 1979. And here in New York, in the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, the 8th snowiest February on record in New York City with 26 inches of snow. First, let's talk about why we get storms like this and what the ingredients are. Number one, you gotta have moisture, right? So moisture comes from the ocean, it forms the clouds, and it increases the amount of precipitation you can get, right? Because you need water. Number two, you need what we call an active jet stream. You probably see these maps with those moving arrows. They're like train tracks, and they drive storms from one place to another. And then, of course, you need what? Cold weather, cold air, and temperatures below freezing are required for snow and ice, and we've had plenty of Arctic air sinking down into the entire 48 states, cold enough to produce a lot of snow. So now let's talk about global warming or climate change. If you think about it, despite how much snow we got this season, the last 7 years have been the hottest 7 years on record. And if you look at the warmest years, look how many are since you were born. That's amazing, kids. So we are seeing an increase in temperature, and the globe is getting warmer. But think about this. Climate is the weather, of course, not in a specific region, but really it's in a specific region over a long period of time, kind of a broader look at things. So it's not just the weather in front of your home. And it's not just the weather on your block. It's not even just the weather in your city or state for a week or a day or a month. It's over a long period of time. Weather refers to a much shorter term. What was the weather today? What's the weather going to be tonight? Is it going to be a snowy day? Is it going to be a chilly month? So weather is one thing. Climate is something completely different. Now, let's talk about how global climate change affects us. We're going to see more extreme weather events across the globe, and we are going to see, and we have seen, an increase in water temperature and air temperature. And that means we can also see stronger storms, bigger hurricanes, more frequent hurricanes, flooding, drought, tornadoes, and heat waves. So you're right. We had a very cold, very snowy winter where you are, but somewhere else, someone had a very hot, very dry summer. And the extremes are getting more frequent. Great question, Lester.
All right. Well, Dave Price, good to have you on. Folks should know you're my local weatherman at Channel 4 here in New York, and kids can certainly watch and follow the climate and the weather wherever they are. Thanks so much, my friend.
You bet.
All right, let's turn now to the human body and some really interesting facts that may surprise you. Guy Raz and Mindy Thomas are the hosts of Wow in the World, a podcast for kids, and now the duo are working on a new project. Joining us now, Guy Raz and Mindy Thomas. It's so great to have you both here. So, Mindy, we know about the podcast. Tell me about this big new project.
Well, Lester, when we set out to write a book for Wow in the World, we decided what is one thing that every single kid has in common, that every single person has in common, and that is the human body. It's more amazing and more complex than any piece of technology we'll ever experience, and it's also super gross. You know, the sounds it makes, the things that squeeze out of it. We were really excited to explore that.
Yeah, and one of the things that struck me, Guy, is you write about eye color, and something I really hadn't given a lot of thought about. I'm curious, what's the most popular eye color out there?
It's a great question, Lester, because the most common eye color on planet Earth is, what do you think?
I'm going to say brown.
That's it. It's brown. Mindy, he got it. It's brown.
Yeah,
Good
look
job,
right
Lester.
here. Huh?
And what's even more amazing is that every single person in the world with blue eyes has one common ancestor.
Really? We don't know who that person is.
We don't know him, but we did explore it in Wow in the World.
We did.
That's awesome. Well, one of the things we like to do here on this show is hear questions from our viewers. So we have one for you, and it comes from Grace. Here it is.
Hello, my name is Grace. I have a question about belly buttons. Why do people have belly buttons? And also, why do some people have innies and some people have outies?
The big innie and outie debate. Go ahead, guys.
Well, Grace, that is a great question, and a question that we also wondered when we were writing this book. I mean, first of all, why is the belly button even called a belly button? When you press on it, nothing happens. But what we found is that the belly button is really just a scar. It's left over from where you were attached to your mom or your birth mother before you were even born. It was how she passed nutrients down to you. When you were born, you didn't need that umbilical cord anymore. It was cut off, and what's left is your belly button. It's really just a scar, and the innie versus outie thing is just how your belly button healed.
And Guy, here's one for you. Let me ask you about another part of the human body that has to do with laughter. Explain to me why we can't tickle ourselves.
This is all to do with the cerebellum. It's a part of our brain that basically says, hey, something's coming, something's about to come at you. And when you know that you're going to get tickled, when you can do it yourself, you can't surprise yourself. You can't do it to yourself because you know that it's coming, and it's all because of the cerebellum in your brain.
That's a great explanation. And I want to ask you, Mindy, about the science behind skin. What should we know about skin?
Skin is amazing. If you could buy it in a store, I would buy it. It is waterproof. It keeps germs and other invaders out of your body. It tells you what you're feeling. It's full of nerve endings telling you whether you're hot or you're cold. And it essentially keeps your body from evaporating. Without skin, we might just evaporate into thin air.
All right, so Guy, let me ask you this. In putting this project and this book together, was there anything you found out about the human body that just really knocked you off your feet?
So many things, Lester, but the two things that really stand out is, in the course of a human lifetime, our heart will beat about 2.5 billion times, and we will have about 500 million breaths. And that's it. We only get about 500 million breaths in a whole human lifetime. So it's really important to enjoy our lives and live them to their fullest potential.
That is really words of wisdom and some science built in there. Mindy Thomas and Guy Raz, you guys make all of us smarter, and we really thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Lester.
All right, now let's turn to one of my favorite pictures of the week. I want you to meet Humphrey the koala. Love that name, by the way. This is the very first koala joey to be born in over a year at the Taronga Zoo in Sydney, Australia. Humphrey is 8 months old and a sign of hope for this threatened species and a real cutie. Finally, in our Inspiring Kids series, how one girl is honoring the lives lost during the pandemic. Here to tell us about it, our friend Kevin Tibbles.
1 year into the pandemic, 13-year-old Madeline Fouget is on a mission to stitch some hope back into our lives.
Even though I am very young, I do understand that it is of grave importance that we remember these people who have died from COVID and not just dismiss them as a number among others.
Over the past 10 months, Madeline has been using her hands and her heart to create a COVID memorial quilt, collecting fabric, mementos, and letters from families who've lost a loved one to the virus. Something to remember them by.
What's the message behind your quilt?
It's a very wonderful experience to be able to hear about who that person was. You can really see that person come alive through the stories and the squares.
This sentimental project is also continuing a legacy. Madeline's mother, Catherine, helped create the famous 48,000 panel AIDS memorial quilt in the 1980s.
To be a part of both memorial quilts for me has been very healing. It makes me not feel powerless.
Madeline's memorial is bringing that same comfort to Amber Carter, who submitted fabric for her late 13-year-old daughter.
I'm just glad that my daughter has had a chance to touch people's lives.
One of her 6 panels is on display at the California Science Center, a powerful visual of our nation's collective loss.
What I really hope is that people can come and see and hear all these stories and see all these squares about these people, and that they can really grow from this and heal and know that they're really gone, and sort of
Find some closure in it all.
yes, sort of find some closure from seeing all these squares and hearing the stories.
A project filled with love and compassion, and one that Madeline will keep working on, a remembrance to those we have lost.
Madeline, that's really wonderful what you're doing. What a beautiful, beautiful tribute. Well, that's going to do it for us parents. Just a reminder, if your child has a question about any topic, email a video to us at nightlynewskids@nbcuni.com. And just a programming reminder, you can catch a new episode of Nightly News Kids Edition this Saturday on NBC. Check your local listing for time. Thanks for watching, everyone, and remember, take care of yourself and each other.